Hey everyone, my name is Anna Woods. Welcome to my sheStrength barn gym. I'm excited to share with you guys today a little bit about my story, how I overcame shoulder pain, shoulder injury, foregoing surgery and choosing a non-surgical route, and getting back to lifting and doing what I love pretty much pain-free. So a little backstory on me. I played college softball. I had a traumatic injury as far as a dislocation at the time, but did no rehab, needed no surgery, told me I was good to go at that point. Flash forward like 15 years, I start competing in CrossFit, doing some Olympic lifting, and I get this nagging pain in my left shoulder, which was diagnosed various ways, a lot of impingement type of pain. They thought I had a labral tear for a long time and ended up being a glenohumeral injury and then Hill-Sachs lesion. So I chose not to do surgery just because I wanted to continue to lift and do what I loved and not be limited by surgery and a decreased range of motion from that surgery. So I worked with a doctor near me, Dr. Jared Shoemaker, who introduced me to the concept of Dynamic Neuromuscular Stability, DNS. We worked on that for probably a year and a half, and I'm still working on it every day, but in terms of repatterning the way my shoulder moves, it has been game changer for me and the way I approach my personal training and the way I train other clients. So I want to show you guys a little bit today some of the rehab that I did, how I did it, and maybe some ways to possibly assess yourself and see if you don't have a few things going on that I was dealing with. So the first thing we did was test for several different ranges of motion in my shoulder. And the one that we did that was the biggest clue for me was internal range of motion, internal rotation range of motion in my shoulder. When I first started, he cued me to hold my shoulder blade down, have my elbow out at 90 degrees, and just let my arm relax to the front. The first time I did that test, I couldn't get my arm relaxed past 90 degrees here. This was all the farther it went. He educated me on the concept that the desired range of motion should be almost fingertips to the floor. Like right now where I'm at today is the goal that and where I should have been all the time. And I'm telling you the same. So if you put your arms out at 90 degrees, press shoulder blades down to the floor, press low back down to the floor, your arms relax towards your hip bones. Your arms should be close to touching the mat without letting the shoulder come up. So the kicker is sometimes it helps to have someone hold it down and see how much range of motion you have in your shoulder here. So that's the first test that we did. The second test that we did was testing T-spine mobility, which I am seriously lacking. All those years I thought I had really limited shoulder range of motion. I actually have pretty super lax shoulders, but very tight T-spine. So one of the other ways that we tested T-spine, I'm going to show you here. It's easier to see without my shirt on. Was through the mid-back, movement through the mid-back. So how well you can move your upper back through a range of motion in movement. And one of the ways to test that was going in all fours position, pressure in the belly. You can't use the shoulder without the core, which is a whole nother video in itself. But as I'm rocking back and forth or I'm just holding there, I shouldn't see this type of position. This is what I looked like when I first started all of this. My upper back was super rounded through here, and I could not get it to relax without losing my low back. So I would try to flatten my upper back and my low back would arch. I would try to elongate my low back and my upper back would arch as well. Other ways to see this were when I was lifting. If I would go to do a snatch or a clean or a deadlift, I'd go to pick the bar up and all the initiator of the movement was through my mid-back. And it might not have even been as defined, but anytime I was moving, you could see my mid-back was doing the movement right here. If you can't see what I'm talking about, watch this part of my back. When I would take off from a lift, this is what it would look like here. And also in other terms, when I did any type of overhead movement, I had a very defined rotated scap shoulder compared to my other side. It looks kind of like this. When my goal was symmetry, which I still struggle with, but shoulder blades down and back, one side should look like the other. Should be no difference between the scaps on either side of my back and shoulder position. So those were several tests that we did from the beginning to determine whether where my issues were lied and where I was lacking function in range of motion and mobility. And then the goal then was to make those positions and make my shoulder, core, obliques functional despite the injury. We're going to repattern the movement and make my shoulder move correctly. So a couple things we did was, one, worked a ton on mobility. So I did a lot of T-spine foam rolling. I would do foam roll in the upper back. I'd spend a lot of time here just rolling mid-back from bottom of neck to the bottom of the rib cage. I'd work on each corner. I'd roll a little bit on each side. I would do this on the other side. I would also carry a plate or a weight on my chest and roll for a little added intensity through that tissue. I'd spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes on that. We also spent some time working on elongating the back of the shoulder and the pec. So I would put the ball here in the front of the shoulder, lean into the wall, raise my arm up and down 10 times or so on each side, trying to loosen that up through here. Then I would do the same thing on the other side. I'd put the ball behind my shoulder blade, press it in there, work some elongation through here and side to side. So again, just giving me some temporary range of motion before I lifted by doing some soft tissue work through there. Then after I did mobility, then we started working into stability. So my goal with all of my movement and with all of my rehab was to make sure that I was patterning in correct movement, correct patterns back into my shoulder. I was removing the old way of overcompensating by using my shoulder and trying to add in a healthier version, a healthier way of moving. So a couple of those involved stabilizing the scap. One of the ones I did quite often was what we call low kneeling. So I would try to get in a position where everything was flat from the back of my head to my tailbone. I would gently press my elbows down into the floor and away from me as I press through my shins back towards my elbows. So as I'm pressing down, I'm doing deep belly breaths. Shoulder blades are down and back gently. Again, I'm auditing my shoulder. I'm making sure that I'm not getting into this front impingement position, but I'm keeping my shoulder blades gently down and back. And as I'm gently pressing my elbows this way, down and away from me, I'm pressing my shins back towards those elbows. And as I'm holding, I'm taking deep breaths, and I'm getting a really intense stretch stability exercise through my mid-back. Then once I'm stabilizing there well, then we'll add movement. Now I reach. Again, as I'm adding movement, trying not to let that shoulder blade drop or my shoulder rotate inwardly. Again, feeling a ton of stretch through the mid-back and the scaps on both sides. The other one I did a lot of was sideline exercise. So we did a lot of shoulder movement, rotating over the top, side plank, trying to keep shoulder blade down. So as I stabilized, I didn't want to initiate the movement and let the shoulder drive forward. I wanted to keep it down and back, press through the elbow and the core, and rotate from a good position on either side. And once I did stability work, then we got really specific in paying attention to how I moved and making sure that every time that I did a movement, my shoulders were staying down and back. And if I couldn't move and keep it in that position, then we modified the movement until I could maintain it and that my functional capacity was within range of healthy patterning. So the first thing that I did was rechecked bench press. So when I first started doing bench press, let me roll this way. I used to do a lot with my back arched and chest up, because you want to bring the bar down and you want to go as short as possible so you can lift more weight. But what I realized is as I was arching my back, my shoulders were jamming to the front of the socket every time I was lifting, and that was putting that shoulder back in a bad movement pattern. I needed to be able to lift with my shoulder blades down and back and the shoulders relaxed. So for me to get a neutral spine, I started with 1 foot in the air or 2 foot in the air with support, pressing my low back down and pressing my shoulders into the floor and moving from a limited range of motion here. I also did that same pattern with just single arm, and as I was pressing, I'm making sure my shoulder was staying in contact with the floor of the bench all the way down, all the way back up. Because again, I didn't want to do the mobility and stability exercises and then go undo everything I just trained into my shoulder with crappy movement patterns in my lifting. The other thing I paid a lot of attention to was lifting, like I was showing you before. I was trying to align my T-spine, make sure that my back was moving in a flat way with all pulls, that I wasn't initiating with my upper back. I couldn't go all the way to the floor without going to here. My initial range of motion with the deadlift, keeping my spine neutral, was just below the knees. So for the longest time, I only deadlifted to right below the knees, or I only did cleans from right below the knees, because anywhere past that, this is the only way I could get there. My upper back had to round, and I jam my shoulders to the front of the socket. It was the same thing with pull-ups. When I do pull-up movements, I could not pull my body up over the bar without bringing my shoulders, shrugging my shoulders, or them rolling forward, or me arching my back to get there. So originally when I did pull-ups, my movement would look like this. Here, or I'd shrug really hard to pull. And again, I was jamming those shoulders to the front of the socket. So for me, initially, I had to do a lot of hanging with support. You can see my feet are on a box, and I'd look in the mirror, and I'd make sure that as I go to initiate the pull using foot support, I was keeping my shoulder blades down and back, my spine straight, and I was pulling from a good, safe position. I wasn't pulling from here. I wasn't pulling from shrug with my neck. I was pulling from shoulder blades down and back with support, trying to keep neutral spine, shoulder blades down and back on both sides. So I used my camera a lot. I'd set it up just like I have this today. I'd record all of my movements. I'd watch it. I'd go back, correct the movement again. I'd apply modifications and limitations to those movements so that whatever I was doing was patterning good positions back into my shoulder, not taking them away from what I just practiced with rehab with Dr. Shoemaker, rehab with my warm-up. I wanted it also to carry through into my lifting and my workouts. So one of the things he told me when I first started, he says to a lot of people, is you have to be willing to suck first before you can get better. So I had to peel back all the layers and all the weights and everything I was doing for quite some time to repattern the movement and get out of those crappy movement patterns. And then once I started subconsciously being able to keep my shoulder in a good position, I was able to then start adding intensity and weight back into these exercises. It was probably 1.5 years solid before I was able to do that, and I'm still subconsciously having to work sometimes on certain movements of not letting the shoulder hinge forward, because it was 15 some years of compensating in this position, and now I have to learn to keep it elongated and compensate from a good healthy position with my shoulders, whether it be in my lifting, whether it be in picking up my kids, or whatever it may be. I have to make sure that my shoulder stays in a solid position. So hopefully giving you some of those movements as far as stability exercises, mobility, and then how to assess yourself in strength, you're able to take away a few things and assess your own shoulder. I do consultations and online video consults with people just like this, running them through similar assessments on Fridays through my online sheStrength app. I would love to help you if you have questions about your shoulder pain. You can find me at sheStrength.com. You can find me at sheStrength on Instagram, or I have a YouTube channel at sheStrength.